This is not a spontaneous event. I believe that this is all part of an organized rollout of information. What they say, how they say it, and who is saying it is all being controlled.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watch Mojo and Unveiled. I'm your host, Rob, and I'm back again to talk some more about unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. Today's guest is Ron James. He's a filmmaker and the director of media relations for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And I'm really excited to speak to him about his films, about some of the most recent UAP revelations, and a little bit about what to look forward to heading into 2025. So welcome, Ron. I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to getting into this with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. I think a good place to start would be your film Accidental Truth, which was released in 2023. It's a good segue into some of the events that happened this year in 2024. So if you wouldn't mind, let's just talk a little bit about that. The title, Accidental Truth, what exactly is that referring to? And yeah, what is the big takeaway from that film without giving it all away, I guess?
The term accidental truth, I thought I coined it, but later on I found out that it's been out there. But my definition of it is what happens when evidence or statements lead one to a conclusion that was not originally intended to be revealed. And in the film, there's a lot of what we call accidental truths that come from people saying something they shouldn't have said or slipping up. And so we in the film we pretty much lay out the most compelling case for crash retrieval teams and the legacy programs that all existed, and the fact that we're being given a whole new narrative that is designed to whitewash the past with regard to government involvement in the UFO UAP phenomenon. So I'm happy to tell everybody in the audience that as of recently, you can watch Accidental Truth for free, and I hope you do. You can see it on YouTube Movies. You can see it on Tubi. You can also still rent it on Amazon and Apple and all the usual places. But it won 28 film festival awards and was called one of the most important UFO documentaries that's been done. And I've been told by people in Washington, D.C., that a lot of the flap that came in the latter part of 2023 was actually caused by some of the stir that Accidental Truth caused inside the intelligence community. So everybody, I urge you to watch the film. It's very compelling. We have Lou Elizondo, Michio Kaku, the famous scientist. We have Ralph Blumenthal from the New York Times. And there's just there's a lot of content, and it's still a strong film.
I definitely recommend that everybody check that out. Definitely watch it on YouTube or wherever you can. I've seen it a couple of times. And one of the striking things that I took away from the film was basically filling in the gaps of what happened between Project Blue Book and 2004 with the Nimitz incident, which is kind of where the new narrative, if you will, starts again. So what happened in those years that the government is not admitting to necessarily?
Well, though, from the Roswell incident moving forward, and there were other things before that, but I refer to that personally as the modern era of the UFO cover-up. We had situations where there were discoveries made and groups were convened to manage the information. And at some time very early, they all decided that this could not be put out to humanity and they needed to keep it a secret. And that spawned decades of deception and dark government programs and partnerships between government and industry where there was no accountability to not even the body politic, much less the American people or the people of the world. So we have a situation where this just kind of spiraled into something that, as of now, they're not even in a position to take accountability for what happened and what they've done. And the presence of non-human intelligence is becoming so obvious in so many ways that they're kind of between a rock and a hard place because they can't come out and explain, well, yeah, we've known about this in our country since the 30s. We've known about it worldwide since the beginning of recorded history. There is documentation of non-human intelligence interacting with people, and we've been covering it up, and some people have been profiteering from it. So how do we do this? And that's where we're at right now. We're at the mushroom cloud of the S hitting the fan with these people. And there's still a lot of debate inside government and industry and the clandestine community on how we get this information to humanity without a whole lot of people being in trouble.
One concept that was introduced early in the film was just the issue of trust in the people who are revealing this information because they work for or have worked for the government. Are they necessarily trustworthy people that we should be taking, as their truth as gospel, or should everything be taken with a grain of salt? Where do you stand on that?
It's really interesting. It's a double-edged sword, and we're going to be exploring that a lot more in the next film. But in one way, we have to be thankful that we have people inside our government, inside our military, that are capable of taking an oath to not reveal information and not reveal it. So on one hand, there are people of a certain amount of integrity for doing that and for being so steadfast about it. But on the other hand, we have to realize that these are the people who hold the keys to the kingdom. Inside of their heads, locked in their knowledge, is information that would change the entire course of humanity if they could just lay it out. And so we resent them collectively in some way for continuing to hold that secret when it's so important. I used to be one of those people that resented these guys. But at this point in time, I kind of understand where they're coming from, and I'm thankful that we have people that will adhere to the to the promises that they made. We're dealing with a bureaucracy and people at the level of Lou Elizondo or Hal Puthoff or any of these people that you see out there that have this knowledge, Christopher Mellon. They are not really authorized to put it out. And I will also say that everything that we've seen since 2017 with the public rollout of information from Lou Elizondo and the UAP videos, all the way to what we're seeing now with David Grush and with other whistleblowers coming forward, this is not a spontaneous event. I believe that this is all part of an organized rollout of information. What they say, how they say it, and who is saying it is all being controlled. And that these guys, in a way, they're still working within the system to get the information out. They will all say that it's not orchestrated, that it's an organic process that began, but they're also being pulled into skiffs and told what they can say and what they can't say. David Grush did not just come out saying these things with his fingers crossed. There was a year-long process that was involved in vetting him to the media and in vetting him to the public. And I know that there's people out there when I say that say that I'm wrong, but I interviewed Ralph Blumenthal, who broke the story with Leslie Keene about David Grush, and he told me the whole process and how long it took. So I have inside information that confirms this. So we're watching an organized rollout of information, and it's guys like me that are chipping away at the sides, chipping away at the edges, trying to preserve the actual truth against a controlled disclosure. Sorry if that was long-winded, but there's a lot to it.
No, absolutely. We need to get everything out there in detail. If it is an orchestrated rollout of information, what is the larger reason, in your opinion, for revealing all of this now?
Well, we're reaching a point in our technological capabilities that you can no longer hide this stuff. The sensors that see UFOs and the technology that makes that possible that the military has is now falling into civilian hands. And we have similar technology now that we can just buy and deploy. Space flight is getting more and more commercialized, so it's going to be harder and harder to hide what's happening in outer space. We have people like Elon Musk that want to go to Mars. Soon, if they go to Mars, sooner or later they might find out things about that planet that we're not being told. So the information is on the verge of revealing itself. And we also have the experiencer phenomenon where people are having these encounters that they just can't deny. And it's similar stories being told all over the world. It's similar stories occurring to more and more people. And so we're on the verge of potentially having this non-human intelligence reveal itself to us in a significant way, or we are going to discover them on our own. So they're kind of up against that solid brick wall of catastrophic disclosure, whether they're involved or not. And so I think that's why we're getting what we're getting.
One of the key accidental truth moments from your film was when Lou Elizondo referred to UAP as they. Where are they coming from? What are they doing here? What are their capabilities? And something similar happened at the November 13th congressional hearing where I believe Congressman Moskowitz called him out for basically saying, you know, you can't talk about Fight Club if there is no Fight Club, referring to the back engineering programs. Like, you know, if Lou can't talk about back engineering, then that means that there must be, you know, stuff happening. So, what, in your view, is kind of being said without being said through all of this? What is the big takeaway that we should get from reading between the lines?
That all the stories about legacy programs are true. All the stories about reverse engineering of captured craft and captured materials is true. The one thing that happened at the hearings that was especially gratifying for me is that myself and some people that I was there with actually they had met Eric Burleson the night before the hearings and gotten into a conversation with him about the hearings the next day, and he actually asked us to supply some questions. And so while we were waiting in line for the hearings, we texted him one question, and then we were actually sitting in the back of the room in the hearing, texting him follow-up questions in real time, which he then asked Lou Elizondo. So I consider this a personal victory and another accidental truth, because after he asked him the first question, which was if we were sitting in a skiff somewhere, could you provide me with proof that would convince me? And Lou sidestepped that question. But we immediately, I was sitting with Danny Sheehan, I was sitting with Melinda Leslie, and I was sitting with another friend of mine who I can't talk about, who was actually doing the texting. And the next question about Lockheed Martin divesting themselves of the materials and trying to give them to Bigelow Aerospace, you know, we covered that in Accidental Truth. And we've always suspected that Lockheed Martin was the company, but that's never been confirmed. But right there in the back of the room during the hearing, we texted Eric to hit Lou with that question. And when he did, Lou gave us Lou gave us another accidental truth when he basically acknowledged or did not disagree that it was Lockheed Martin that had the materials. And so that was just absolutely, that was a stunning moment. Not many people realized what was happening behind the scenes. And it might be the first time a UFO investigator actually got to drive a congressional hearing from the back seat, literally.
That's very cool.
So we got Lockheed Martin had some of this material. It just goes further to prove that these programs existed.
What was the standout moment, if any, from the most recent hearing for you, or the most significant and impactful one? Because a lot of people feel that there wasn't too much new information revealed, but you know, I think it still steps in the right direction. Maybe not the bombshells that we were hoping for, but what is the most significant thing spoken about to you?
Well, you know, people are like, no bombshells. I think that hearing was full of bombshells. I mean, we had Lou Elizondo acknowledging, you know, is there non-human intelligence? Yes. What I think everybody's waiting for is that official announcement with some kind of verifiable physical something like, you know, hey, we're inside this secret room at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and this is one of the craft we have. That would be great. Probably not going to happen, maybe ever. So, considering the caliber of the people that were there and the things that they acknowledged, I thought a lot of the hearing was a bombshell. And what happened during the hearing where we were actually able to help shape the questions, to me, that was a personal milestone. And if you watch the hearing, this is one of my favorite moments. If you watch the hearing and you wait for the part where Mr. Gold from NASA begins to proclaim the history of NASA as a transparent and open, honest organization, there is an audible laugh in the back of the room that took the whole entire chamber. And I have to tell everybody that that was me. I could not contain myself listening to that being conveyed. We all know the history of NASA and their ability to cover stuff up, airbrush photos before we had Photoshop, uh, lose important information, and basically lie. So the idea that NASA is a transparent, open, and completely honest organization, if I could have fallen out of my chair, I would have.
Let's dig into that a little deeper because you have former astronauts in your film talking about things that were revealed to them. And I'm curious to know a little bit more about some of the secrets that NASA might be holding on to.
Well, there's excuse me, there's transmissions from astronauts that some have been made public, and I'm certain some haven't, of things that they saw on the moon. There is evidence going way back that NASA would routinely retouch photos and take things out. That's all been proven. Mike Barra has written some good books about it with Richard Hoagland. And although some people might think some of the claims in that are a little far-fetched, there's a lot of it that's true. So there's a very good track record for anybody that wants to do a little bit of research about NASA not being 100% open and honest with the public. And the interview that I did with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, uh, I never published that interview, but but part of it's in Accidental Truth. He talks about how he was told that the Roswell incident was real. Um, and so, but what another thing that we don't know about Edgar Mitchell, not many people, is that, well, I guess everybody who knows about him knows that, so don't let me misspeak. He came back, he had such a transformative personal experience coming back from the moon that it changed him forever. And he came back and he founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And he went on to do an awful lot of work in that field and trying to kind of bring science and spirituality and nature of reality all together. And when he passed away, we found the famous Wilson Davis memo was included in his papers. So that memo has been, for a really long time, a subject of great debate. Rather, it was actually a real document, and rather the stuff in it was true. And for people that aren't sure, don't know what that is, Dr. Eric Davis supposedly took a memo after a meeting with Admiral Thomas Wilson, where Thomas Wilson told him about his efforts to get to these legacy programs and to get read in that were unsuccessful even for a high-ranking government official. This document and its legitimacy have been questioned for years, but I can tell you guys that at the Saul conference, immediately after Washington, D.C., I flew to San Francisco for the Saul conference, and that Dr. Eric Davis was on stage, and he literally came as close to finally acknowledging the truth about the Wilson Davis memo as we're ever going to see. So it was absolutely spellbinding. And that all originated from Dr. Edgar Mitchell and his work.
For so many years, NASA was the de facto space agency of America, and now we have SpaceX, and the doors are kind of opening to others to enter into the space exploration field. Elon Musk being a huge player, and he's been a little bit cagey about the UAP stuff. He doesn't really want to talk about it, seemingly doesn't really answer questions about it, and kind of gives the he has the attitude like, if something were going on, I'd know about it and I'd be talking about it. But um, what's your take on how much he knows and the stance that he's taken on the topic?
Okay, so I can answer that, but it's I need to quantify it that this is just my opinion. I've heard a few things. My old studio was right across the street from SpaceX, and I used to go and hang around at this restaurant that was on the SpaceX campus, where a lot of the SpaceX people would go for dinner and to eat lunch. It's called Eureka Tasting Room. And so you'd hear some conversations, and I'd spoken with some people that were on his video team and some other people at SpaceX that would um, tend to confirm that that's not exactly true. And the take that I have is that Elon's basically been told to stay out of the alien conversation. And the reason is obvious. We don't need other people muddying the waters. The organized rollout of disclosure is very, the people that are attempting to orchestrate it have a very specific plan, and Elon's a bit of a wild card. So the bargain there is stay out of the alien conversation. You can stay in, you can keep playing with rockets and you can keep getting contracts. If we see what happened to Robert Bigelow, who had fantastic NASA contracts, the potential of his space stations going into space, he had one attached to the space station. Then all of a sudden he goes on 60 Minutes and says there's aliens. Within a year, Bigelow Aerospace had been stiffed by NASA. He literally had to try to sue them to get paid for the remainder of his contracts. All of his technology got cannibalized by other companies, his inflatable space habitats. Bigelow Aerospace was literally shut down because of COVID. There are those who believe that that was retribution for him going public with the alien comment. And then the next thing we see is Robert Bigelow's doing life after death, and he's not talking about aliens anymore. And so Elon doesn't want that to happen to him. But you have to ask yourself, if there's reverse engineering programs, if there's materials out there that industry has been able to utilize and use, you don't think he's gotten his hands on some of that stuff? So I've been told from insiders at SpaceX that there's a lot more understanding of the ET non-human intelligence phenomenon than he is ever going to let on, but he's not going to go there without permission. And so that's just how it is, and that's the deal he made. So that's my opinion. It's a moderately informed opinion, but obviously not something that I can state as pure fact. But that is the answer to a very long answer to a very short question. And if people go to YouTube and search Ron James, Elon Musk, there's a video that I made actually calling him out about this and offering to give him a private briefing where people from MUFON and people from our field would come to SpaceX and spend 15 minutes with him at a conference table and line him out of what we know. And it'd be interesting to get him and Robert Bigelow in a room so that they could have a conversation, or him and Lou Elizondo in a room so that they could have a conversation. So Elon is playing the game, and as we can see by how the political situation is unfolded, he's pretty good at it.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, him still building rockets powered by fossil fuels and whatnot, as they can do pretty amazing things, land themselves, they're reusable and whatnot, but it's nothing compared to the technologies that we're seeing from some of these UFO cases. So I wonder what it's like for him if, as you say, he's gotten his hands on some of these materials, but still being limited compared to what these other craft that we see can do.
Well, yeah, I don't know how much longer that's going to be the case. Um, Anti-gravitic technology, which we believe we've had for a while, at least in some form, and other technologies that will enable us to get into space in a much less clumsy way, do exist, at least on paper. And there's got to be a way at some point for this stuff to roll out. Secret technology finds its way into the public mainstream through lies about where it originated. Nitinol, the shape-shifting metal, is a classic example that's been proven. It was supposedly created in a naval weapons lab, but we know through research that it was actually created in its early stages by a contractor, Battelle Memorial Institute, working for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base around the same time as Roswell. So technology that they come up with, they can't say, "Oh, we reverse engineered it from an alien craft." So they'll come up with some kind of story about where it originated, and then they'll roll it out to humanity. And so SpaceX is perfectly positioned to roll out these new technologies. And at some point, they probably will, and there'll be other companies. But the thing to watch very closely is that Trump is trying to put in place Jared Isaacman to run NASA. And that is very, very telling.
What more can you say about that?
Well, okay, so Jared Isaacman is a billionaire entrepreneur. Uh, he loves aviation. He bought his own military jet, learned how to fly, doesn't have any military training experience. His background is basically, uh, and I want to make sure I don't get any of this wrong, but he literally did not complete his education. Somehow or another ended up a multi-billionaire with by creating a pay system for processing credit cards. Um, and he then joined forces with SpaceX to make the documentary about taking civilians into space for the first time. And he was with the guy that did the first civilian spacewalk up in a SpaceX rocket. So this is a guy that is knee deep with Elon Musk. They're fellow billionaires. They've been working together for a long time. And if Jared Isaacman ends up running NASA, in my opinion, SpaceX will be running NASA. And that's a very interesting partnership, wouldn't you say?
It definitely sounds like it. One other thing that was revealed in the, well, not revealed during the hearing, but spoken about during the most recent hearing is the Immaculate Constellation program that was broken shortly before. What is the significance of that, do you think? And will we be hearing about even more government programs coming to light in the near future?
Well, I think we're hearing about the government programs. We're just not hearing about what they're called and where the bodies are buried, so to speak. Um, People who really do their research and follow the field can tell you there's numerous places where supposedly craft are stashed, supposedly different engineering programs are going on with different things. If a material was recovered that had this property, it would go to this laboratory. We know all of this, but we don't have the carte blanche to walk in the door and ask to see what's behind the vault. I wish we did. In fact, I've actually told Kirsten Gillibrand's office and the people at AARO, you guys get the keys. We'll show you what doors to go to. We know that much about this stuff, but making that happen is in this current state, even though it's getting better, is next to impossible. We know where there's craft, where most likely bases where they're being studied. We know where materials stuff would be studied. We know where energy and propulsion would be studied. There's different bases and different facilities all over the United States that would be logical recipients of different things in reverse engineering programs. There just doesn't seem to be the genuine stomach to go start knocking on doors, nor the clearances, nor the capability or the possibilities. I mean, if you're AARO and you actually care about getting to the bottom of this, which the first version of AARO, that's debatable. Uh, how do you go to X base in Wyoming and demand full access and get it? This is what we're up against. We're in this era of supposed transparency, the getting to the actual information and getting to the materials themselves is even harder than it's ever been, even though you might know exactly where they are or have a pretty good guess. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Can you talk a little bit more about Arrow and the significance that program, if it is a program, necessarily has? I watched George Knapp's recent Netflix docuseries, and a big part of that is him compiling a report to contest some of the findings that the first version of Arrow put forward, which was basically that, they kind of squashed everything. I understand that the team's been kind of reformed and revamped, and they're going to be looking at things in a different way. But what more can you say about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I actually had the opportunity to discuss this on camera with Kirsten Gillibrand. It'll be Gillibrand. I'm sorry. It'll be in the next Accidental Truth movie. When the first Arrow and Kirsten was the one who basically designed this. She terminated through legislation the UAP task force and replaced it with Arrow and put Sean Kirkpatrick in place, who in the beginning, and it was her that did that. Arrow is her baby, so to speak. Um, when Kirkpatrick first came forward, there was a lot of enthusiasm, but over time and looking into who this person actually was, he's very deep in the intelligence community and his scientific credentials are fine, but he's also a company man, so to speak. And I have heard and documented in Accidental Truth Next a lot of people that gave AARO information that should have led them right to the front door of answering this that was literally ignored. And so there are a lot of people, and I'm one of them. And again, this is just an opinion, who believed that Sean Kirkpatrick was the front man for whitewashing the reports and for ignoring the pertinent information. There's a whole story about how David Grush was supposed to go into AARO. AARO says we kept inviting him, he kept not showing up. David Grush says that he felt threatened, that he was unable to solidify an appointment. And there's other stories of this as well. And I know for a fact firsthand that Lou Elizondo went and talked to AARO. Now, Lou would have been able to, in a classified setting, tell them an awful lot of information, including this whole Lockheed connection and other things that he knows about. And so the fact that AARO put out this sterile report debunking a significant amount of information, it doesn't jive with the inside information we have about people that went to AARO, and it doesn't jive with the information that we know AARO was given, and it doesn't jive with Sean Kirkpatrick's actual background. This guy has been an intelligence community asset for a very long time, and in my opinion, he was brought in to toe the line. We all had high hopes that that wouldn't be the case. And then we have, in addition, we have Susan Gao or Susan Guff from the Pentagon, who is their spokesperson. She is always coming out with stories refuting things. When a big material story broke with Bigelow Aerospace that I outlined in Accidental Truth, she's the Pentagon spokesperson that came forward and said, this is all not true. It's all just government programs, has nothing to do with recovered craft or reverse engineering, which we were able to pretty much prove in the film that that was not true. In both of the hearings with AARO, the very first one with Sean Kirkpatrick and the new hearing with the new guy, I can't remember his name, forgive me. In both hearings, if you watch the video, sitting to the right of the AARO director or to the left from the camera perspective, we have Susan Guff. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. People tell me different things, but she's sitting there scowling the whole time. There's actually memes on the internet where she of her grimacing face, looking at the camera and looking at the AARO director. And a lot of people think that this is just a symbolic warning from the Pentagon to anybody who knows who she is, that I know we're saying it's okay to be a whistleblower, but we're really not. And so I have higher hopes for this version of AARO, that it's more transparent. Kirsten Gillibrand certainly believes that AARO is the way to go. It's her baby, and she ran that hearing, and she has personally told me that she thinks it's going to work. So it remains to be seen. But the first iteration of AARO was just more of the whitewashing dog and pony show. And the second iteration of AARO, we can all cross our fingers. I have personally turned in some UFO material to Kirsten's office and had interaction with AARO. We'll be outlining that in the movie. We went to Ohio and we extracted materials and we actually turned them into her office. So that's very exciting stuff. But yeah, cross your fingers on AARO.
Speaking of whistleblowers, it seems that there's been a little bit more effort to protect them and to kind of inspire a little bit more confidence in them, to come out with certain information, but it's still a bit of a sketchy situation. What should what should be done to encourage more people to come forward? And do you see signs that this is happening, or is there still a long way to go in terms of protecting these people?
AARO is promising protection to whistleblowers. I actually was able to interview Kirsten Gillibrand on camera. And one of the things I asked her to do was look right at my camera and tell whistleblowers that they can come forward and that they would be protected. And she did it. And I'm going to publish it very shortly. So you have it straight from a sitting senator that there is protection for whistleblowers. But here's the problem. None of that is actually in place. There are no written rules for how, if you're some guy that worked in a lab, like say you're a Bob Lazar and you come forward, there it's still the wild, wild west. And with people like our Pentagon spokesperson scowling during the whole conversation about whistleblowers coming forward and the history of whistleblowers not being protected, it's not yet what I would consider a safe environment. No, I'm working with Danny Sheehan and the New Paradigm Institute, as well as my work with MUFON. And one of the things that we're putting in place collectively is a team of pro bono attorneys who are standing by to protect whistleblowers through this process. So if you are a whistleblower and you have firsthand experience in these programs, we suggest that first you contact your own attorney, then you contact New Paradigm Institute or MUFON, and let us walk you into the process, which will begin with vetting you, obviously, in confidential situations, putting you into contact with attorneys who will then put you in contact with the offices of one or more senators in Washington, D.C., who will eventually lead you into a conversation with AARO. And that process is as close as we have so far to being able to protect whistleblowers that wish to come forward. There's also another problem, and that's what I call the men in a box. These guys might know things, but they're all under oaths. They're all under NDAs. They're all certainly threatened with what's going to happen to them if they violate their security. And all of that stuff will happen if they come forward potentially. And if they don't have anything to prove it, they're just more people out there stating wild stories. So the position of the whistleblower is very, very difficult in this field, because if you come out and say, "Hey, I worked at Los Alamos and we had a flying saucer and we can fly it, and the TR-3B is real," or any of these things, well, then they've already triggered all of the repercussions that are going to happen to them. They can be discredited. They can lose their retirements. They can be completely ostracized, lose their clearances, potentially go to jail. And can we protect them from all of those things? We're working on it, but I can't say for sure that we can. So then all of a sudden they're hanging out there twisting in the wind after revealing everything with no proof. The intelligence community immediately goes after discrediting them, like they did to Lou Elizondo, like they did to David Grush. And these guys are just literally twisting in the wind after having just risked everything to reveal what they know. And it doesn't move the ball forward. So these poor people, and I feel sorry for them, I really do. I can't imagine what it's like to live with these secrets that you can't even tell your wife. These people are men in a box. I wouldn't want to be that for anything. And we have to have a certain amount of compassion for them, because they literally are between a rock and a hard place. And until we figure out how to get this whistleblower protection really working, like if I'm a whistleblower and I've worked in a lab and I come forward and I say, "Yes, this is where the lab is." Well, do we have some kind of congressional police force that's going to go get into that lab and find out if it's true? Could they get access? It's very, very treacherous at the moment. But I will say that if anybody has whistleblower information and they'd like to begin the process, we do have a program that can get you from consultation with an attorney into a SCIF, into Congress, and the mechanisms for protection are in place.
I'd like to get your take on a very recent event that is currently sweeping the news to some degree, which is what's happening in New Jersey with all of the drone sightings that people are reporting, but even more anomalous craft in the sky doing things that drones shouldn't be able to do. What do you think this is all about? I've heard so many different theories, but I'd like to hear it from you. What is your opinion on that?
At this point in time, it's inconclusive. And I know there's a lot of people that are becoming attached to outcomes. My personal assessment of it is that we're dealing with 30% mystery, 30% misidentification, and 30% mass hysteria of people just suddenly looking up and seeing things. There's a lot of potential explanations. None of them are explaining everything. There's some really, really interesting video coming up of what are clearly orbs uh, being involved in this. And then there's video of drones that are clearly airplanes. Um, and so you have the mundane uh, explanations that the Pentagon and the White House are floating of there's really nothing going on. And then you have the more extreme, oh, it's non-human intelligence, they're orbs morphing into drones. And so you have all across the spectrum. Meanwhile, the incidents are increasing. There's also the story that perhaps these are government drones that are looking for some sort of misplaced material, potentially nuclear. So that's a possibility. I did some research into that. Uri Geller did a post about it where he was told from high-ranking people within Israel that this was the case. The United States government did purchase and does own these drones that are capable of sniffing out gamma rays and that kind of thing, and we've deployed them overseas. And it's not a stretch to think that that could be the case. It would certainly fit in with what they're saying as far as they pose no threat. They're not foreign adversaries. Um, and these drones, even if they're government drones looking for something, are flying legally. So it gives the government cover. Some sort of US government operation deploying the drones in search patterns for whatever reason seems to make the most sense. But I think there's a lot of moving parts, and we're not going to know the answer tomorrow, if at all. And then we have a situation with these things where they're appearing all over the place. And that is also interesting, but we do have these big drones. The drones the size of SUVs that can stay in the air for up to 13 hours exist. You can Google them and you could buy one if you have the money. So it's not a stretch to think that they're just regular drones doing something. Um, so there's that.
If there is a search happening for a nuclear warhead, would it then not follow that some UAP activity could also be expected? We've heard the stories of nuclear missiles being shut down by UFOs throughout, the decades. Could that be a possible connection to what we're seeing right now also?
No, that's a heck of an angle, and as far-fetched as it might sound on the surface, I suppose it's plausible with everything else that we know. Um, Another thing that people don't know is that there is actually an air corridor in that New Jersey area that has been set aside for the testing of drones. And lots of people that are testing drones, people from Amazon all the way through to NASA, use this corridor. It extends from the shore over to where some of the Air Force bases are. And it's literally an air corridor that's been set aside for testing drones and different drone applications. Um, Amazon is using delivery drones in cities right now, literally delivering orders with drones. So we're rapidly approaching a time when drones are everywhere. And so we're going to have to get used to seeing them anyway. The strange orbs that have been filmed and photographed. So one of them by ABC News, it was very compelling, um, in conjunction with physical drones. Certainly makes your theory worth taking a look at. But in order to validate that, we'd have to validate everything else about non-human intelligence and blah blah blah.
Right. Another theory that I've heard put out is that this is simply an exercise to monitor public response to, potential crisis situation or what have you. And it leads me to the question of what you think the public's reaction would be should we get, a UAP event on a large scale that kind of like brings everything to light, that's unavoidable, everybody knows about it. Do you think that the population largely is ready for something like that? Should that happen? What do you predict the reaction to be?
Well, I get that question a lot, and myself and a lot of other people have traditionally answered that question by saying, "Of course we're ready. Humanity's ready. It would be fine." But I think that the real answer is a little more nuanced than that. We have to look at the context. If, for instance, a non-human intelligence were to reveal itself, and we were basically told, "Look, we're here. We've always been here. We're watching you guys' development. We mean you no harm. Life goes on." Then it's going to be fairly easy for humanity to absorb the knowledge, at least to a point, and just continue with its daily life. But if there's a nefarious circumstance where, hey, we're here, we're in charge now, then you're going to see mass panic. So it's really the context. Most people already have the understanding that A, we're not alone in the universe, B, the government knows a lot more than they're telling us, and C, there's evidence of non-human intelligence interacting with humanity for all of recorded history. So most people already understand this. So it's just a simple acknowledgement of these existences. I think it would be possible to not majorly disrupt society with that information. But if it's, hey, they're here and watch out, then society will never be the same and will literally be at the mercy of whatever it is that is revealing itself.
I'd like to speak a little bit about your upcoming film, uh, Accidental Truth Next. So the first film came out in 2023. We have, maybe a year and a half's worth of developments that are up for being covered. What can you say about the upcoming film, and what should we look forward to?
Well, Accidental Truth Next is basically a review of all of the things that have happened in government between the time Accidental Truth came out, which was shortly before David Grush came forward. So we follow all the legislation and the stuff that's happening behind the scenes in Washington. I've been in Washington, D.C. I've met personally with numerous members of Congress. I've actually videotaped me briefing a member of Congress. It's the only video out there ever of a UFO investigator briefing a sitting member of Congress about the cover up going all the way back to the 40s. That'll be part of the film. So we cover the process in Washington, D.C. and where that's unfolded all the way up to the current stuff that's happening now. And then we go into where the whole understanding of non-human intelligence is taking us. And so just like in the original Accidental Truth movie, it was very nuts and bolts up to a certain point, and then it became very esoteric and mystical. In Accidental Truth Next, we're very nuts and bolts up to a certain point, historical documentation. We have new interviews with Tim Burchett. We have Kirsten Gillibrand. We have Nancy Mace. We have Ralph Blumenthal talking about the whole history of how the David Grush story broke. We have Richard Dolan and Steve Bassett talking about the failure of AARO. And we really delve into Sean Kirkpatrick's role and how that all turned out. We have Danny Sheehan revealing some things he's never revealed to people on camera. But then we take a very radical turn into, but what does all this mean in conjunction with who are we as beings and what is the nature of our own reality? So Accidental Truth Next is it's a logical sequence. Matthew Modine is narrating again. And I promise everybody, if they thought the first Accidental Truth was an interesting ride, this one's going to leave you just puzzling over your very existence.
Very much looking forward to that. What do you think we should look forward to in terms of new information coming out potentially next year and maybe even beyond that?
A lot of it is going to depend on the political climate in DC for that prospect. I've been told by, again, sitting members of Congress that there's a good possibility that Donald Trump will choose to reveal more than any other president has revealed yet. He certainly knows some things. He was certainly read into what happened in 47. He's been pretty good at keeping it very close to the vest. But word is that we might get some more information officially through the political process. The political process is going to continue. There are dedicated people in Washington, D.C., elected officials who are not going to let go of this issue. There are people like us at MUFON. We've had over 300 meetings with staffers and sitting Congress people. We're providing quarterly briefings to the House and Senate Intelligence Community committees about the things that are coming in to us. We're working very closely with some members, and then Danny Sheehan and the New Paradigm Institute is doing work with helping to craft legislation and helping to bridge some of these gaps that are coming up. For instance, if you're a aerospace contractor and you received certain materials that allowed you to develop a piece of technology, the way Chuck Schumer wrote his bill, that would fall under eminent domain. The government would have the right to seize that technology, own the technology, and the aerospace companies are like, no, that's our technology. So how do we solve this problem? How do we protect our patents without bringing in antitrust laws and all kinds of other issues that are involved with, we got this information and this material, our competitor didn't. It gave us an illegal edge. So there's all kinds of weird legalities and complications that are involved beyond just should we tell humanity. And all of this stuff has to be worked out. And these conversations, I know for a fact, are happening behind closed doors. How do we protect the people that went to potentially illegal lengths to cover this up? How do we protect our companies? And so it's very, very complex, but it's all being discussed. And so we're going to see that through the political process begin to unfold. So that's one element of it. But we're also going to see an increase in experiencer phenomenon, an increase in experiencers actually being validated with different forms of scientific proof. And we are going to see a increased presence of non-human intelligence.
Ron, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great interview. I look forward to your upcoming film, and I encourage everybody to check out Accidental Truth if you haven't seen it yet. Very good movie documenting a lot of what's happened up until very recently. So do please give that a watch. We'll have links to those in the description for the video. Any parting words before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm not trying to plug MUFON, but this organization's been around for 55 years, and we've done more to advance the topic through a civilian effort than anybody else. And we've got our TV channel, we've got local chapters and meetings. I encourage everybody to go and sign up for MUFON and become a part of it because you can help us support our work in Washington, D.C. We're there, we're lobbying, we have the ear of Congress. And we need help and members all over the world. Our membership's at an all-time high, and we have so much to offer. If you care about the UFO topic, you'll find your community inside of MUFON, and it doesn't cost much to be a part of it. And you can literally be a part of history. So check out MUFON. We're also working with the New Paradigm Institute, and we'll soon be putting out some packages where you can actually participate in both groups. And yeah, it's a really exciting time. And for people that need community to help digest this reality, consider signing up for MUFON.
Excellent. Keep up the amazing work, and I can't wait to see where this leads.
Thanks, man.
All right. Take care.